Today, we have a great number of recordings of people in the afterlife speaking through various types of mediums. Their communication is evidence we continue to live after the body dies. This series presents descriptions by people in the afterlife coming through in Leslie Flint direct voice medium sessions, describing what happened to them when their bodies died. In this video, you will hear a man named Terry Smith describing what happened to him after he died, and he entered the remarkable realm of the afterlife, including, much to his surprise, that he had a conversation with a cat. Hello, I'm Dr. R. Craig Hogan, president of the Afterlife Research and Education Institute and Seek Reality Online. I'm the author of 8 books containing the evidence you will come to the end of this life, but you will never die. Over 2,000 recordings were made of Leslie Flint's sessions in which people came from the afterlife into the room and spoke through an ectoplasmic voice box that formed on Leslie Flint's shoulder. A link to the validations of Flint's abilities is in the description below. The first video in this series had voiceovers of recordings of 4 people speaking from the afterlife about what happened after their bodies died. You can link to that video in the description below. This video contains another voiceover of a speaker living in the afterlife named Terry Smith. Terry Smith describes leaving Earth and finding himself on a pleasant street in a little town. It had all the features you would expect for a street on Earth, and much, much more. Smith had no relatives to greet him on the other side. His closest family, his mother, father, and siblings, were still on Earth. But no one makes the transition to the next life alone. He's greeted by a woman who tells him she is going to look after him. Smith goes with the woman into a beautiful house where he will live. This is the voiceover of the communication by Terry Smith from the afterlife about what happened to him when he arrived there.
I think that the first thing I remember was going up a street. It was a street I'd never seen before, and as a matter of fact, I couldn't realize at first that it wasn't a real street, although it was a real street in a sense, but not the kind of street that, that I'd been used to, but oh, it was all very attractive. Lovely trees on either side of the road, and lovely houses, ever such nice houses. There were little bungalows dotted about here and there were bigger houses, and yeah, it was ever so attractive. And I just couldn't make this out at all. I thought, well, I didn't recognize the place, and yet it seemed as if it could have been somewhere, perhaps in California or something, because it was like I'd seen pictures of, you know, a wide sort of boulevard with trees and sloping lawns and pretty little village houses and things. It was like a sort of well-made-up village, really, but I couldn't make head or tail of it. But I'd found that there was nobody else about. It was just as if I was all there on me own. I thought, this is odd. I didn't even realize fully I was dead, I suppose. I thought I was probably dreaming. I don't know, it was odd. But the road was not a bit familiar, yet there was something about it that gave me some sort of a peculiar inner confidence, I suppose. But anyway, I just walked along and there were all these very pretty houses, and it seemed as dead as a dodo. Not a sound. Then I come further along, I saw a very sweet lady, a very pretty woman she was. I thought anyway. She couldn't have looked more than about 28-30, standing at a little gate. It was the first house that I'd seen with a gate, by the way. All the others seemed to have no entrances, no gates. You just walked up the little path to the front door, sort of thing. There was this sort of fence round it, and I thought, well, it seems a bit odd, after all the other houses being free of fences and that. Anyway, this little old lady, this little woman, she was standing there. Funny thing about her was she looked young, and yet I felt she was old. It sounds stupid, I know, but there you are. But she was leaning over this gate, and as I came to her, she sort of smiled. I stopped and she said, "You looking for something, Sonny?" I thought, blimey. I said, "Yes." Well, sort of. I don't know quite what's happening or where I am. "Oh," she says, "That's all right, Sonny. I've been waiting for you. Come in." So I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. So I thought, I'll go in, so at least it's someone to talk to. And she took me into the front. Well, I suppose you'd call it a parlor. Nice little room it was, very nice, with chintzy curtains and chairs, and it all looked very homely. And there was a cat sitting in one chair, a beautiful black cat. And I don't know, I thought, well, I don't know. Cats. She says, "Come on, Sonny, sit down." So I sat down in the other chair with no cat in it, you see. So she said, "Would you like a drink?" I thought, well, this is something like. Would I like a drink? I thought she was going to offer me a cup of tea or something. So I said, yes, I would, if you please. So she said, what would you like? So I thought, man, well, I must go cagey here, you know. I don't want to look as if I drink, you know. So I said, oh, I'd like a lemon, please. She says, all right. So she goes out and comes back with a glass of lemon, and I thought, well, I don't know. So she says, you know, you've nothing to worry about, Sonny. I've been waiting for you. So I says, waiting for me? So she says, yes. So I didn't know what to say. I sort of sat there, and she says, you know you're dead. So I says, what? So she says, you're dead. I says, come off it. I, um, I can't be dead sitting in a room here with a cat over there and drinking a glass of lemonade, and you're solid and real enough. How can I be dead? I said, I admit it's all a bit strange. I says, at first I thought I was sort of having a dream or something. So she says, well, it's no dream, Sonny. She says, you're dead. So I says, well, if you say I'm dead, how did I get here? So she says, oh, that's all right. She says, I was thinking and praying for you, and I've been given charge of you.
After this introduction to the woman and his new living arrangements, Smith remembers that he had been on a ship that was torpedoed. The woman tells him he drowned. She then goes on to explain that she will be taking care of him, just as his mother would if she were there. This is a voiceover narration of the communication between Terry Smith and the woman.
So she says, well, when your ship went down, and it suddenly came to me. When the ship went down, last thing I remember, you know, was in the water holding onto a part of wood. I don't know what part of the ship it was. Anyway, it was a part of wood I was clinging to. Sort of thought it might hold me up, you know. But of course I realized it was hopeless now. Anyway, she says, you was drowned. So I says, oh. And she says, there's hundreds and hundreds of lads, she says, have come over. So I says, oh. So she says, yes, and every one of those lads has got someone somewhere to look after them. Some have got their own people, relations or friends. Some have got other souls, and I'm one who's in charge of you. She says, you didn't realize, she says, but you were directed. You thought you were walking on your own up the road. She says, but you wasn't. She says, you were being helped by inspiration from a soul whose job it is to help people when they come over suddenly like you did. So I says, oh yeah, you know, sort of listening, like not quite taking it all in, you know. So I says, well, I don't understand this at all. So she says, well, don't you worry. She says, you stay with me. I'll look after you. I'll be like your mom. So I thought, well, that's something, you know. And then she started talking about my people. And it rather shook me because she seemed to know all about my people, about my mom and dad and how they sort of separated, and about my sister who was in the Women's Royal Navy Service, you know, and all that. And I thought, well, I don't know, she seems to know everything about us. So I says, well, are you in any way related to us? So she says, well, not really. But it was part of my job to know something about your people, being as how I've to look after you. And so I says, well, that's funny. Since you say I've only just come over, how do you know about my lot? You know? So she says, oh, well, that's not difficult. It's only a matter of tuning in, she says. Tuning in, I says. Sounds like the wireless. So she says, oh, well, we can. If we have any special reason for wanting to know about a particular person or persons, and it's a special work that we have to do, and we've got some sort of connection there that's necessary for us to know things, then we tune in. She says, a little later on, not yet, we'll go to see your people. So I says, oh, that'll be nice. So she says, Of course, you know they won't know you're dead. They won't know you're there. They'll know you're dead, but they won't know that you're still alive. You can watch them or go and see them. You mustn't be too upset if no one takes any notice of you. So I says, oh, well, I says, I did have an aunt who was a spiritualist. So she says, well, that's good, she says. Perhaps we can get something through in that direction. You never know. We'll have to try her. She says, well, for the time being, you must try and be content to be here. She says, I've got a son on earth, and I'm hoping one day when he comes over here that we shall be together again. I expect we shall, she says. But, in the meantime, I'm going to look upon you as if you're my own son. And she says, I'm going to do all I can for you and try and make you happy. And you're not to worry and you're not to feel alone or anything like that. She says, I think you should rest. This has all been a bit of a shock for you. I'll take you out and you'll be introduced to all sorts of interesting people in our community. So I says, oh yes, that's very interesting.
Smith then notices a cat in the room. The cat comes to him and, much to his surprise, speaks to him. This voiceover contains Smith's reaction to having a cat speak to him.
Then all of a sudden, during the middle of the conversation, this cat did the most funny thing, I thought. It may sound silly, but it jumped off this chair and it came up to me and it sat on its hind legs and it looked up at me and it sort of cocked its ears up and it didn't meow. It didn't make that noise like a cat, but it was just as if the thing spoke. Do you know, I nearly dropped. I was so shaken. She says, oh, She says, don't worry. She says, you'll get used to that. She says, the animals, she says, over here have developed, to a great extent, their ability to make themselves understood. Of course, on Earth, in a way, they can do that. But we don't hear them speak because they haven't language as we understand it. But over here, their thoughts are such that they can sort of vibrate the atmosphere, and you can hear the sounds. And it's merely their thoughts being transmitted to you so that you can hear them. This cat says, how are you? And I thought, by cripes, this is quite mad, Cats don't say, how are you? And I didn't know what to do, what to say. She says, don't worry, you'll get used to that. She says, animals are much more sensitive than people realize, and they have their own knowledge of things. They can transmit thoughts, and they pick up thoughts, and you'll get used to the fact that animals can convey a great deal more from this side than they can on Earth. Anyway, I got sort of adjusted to the idea, and I said, very well, thanks. And then the cat. It seemed as if the cat said, I don't say the cat said this, but it seemed as if it said, well, I hope you'll be happy here. And I thought, well, this is most peculiar. Then the cat went back and sat on the chair and curled up, and as far as I was concerned, it went to sleep. Of course, I still couldn't get this at all. She says, don't worry, you'll understand that animals have a great capacity of understanding, and over here they can transmit their thoughts, the same as I can transmit mine to yours, without even the effort of speaking if I want to. You can read my thoughts and I can read yours. Thought is a real thing to us, and it's very tangible, and that's why animals can communicate by thought force, she said.
Terry Smith learned that no one makes the transition to the next life alone. Everyone is given help, even when they have no close relatives there to greet them. And the realm we enter is as real as the earth realm, with houses, streets, people, animals, and all the things we're accustomed to on earth. Terry Smith's experience is further evidence you will come to the end of this life, but you will never die.